Hey guys, remember to like the video and hit subscribe.
Why did Trump say it was no big deal then?
What, May 29th?
Yeah, why did he say no big deal?
He's got an ego problem.
Okay, so he lied. Did Trump lie, yes or no?
No.
Well, you just said it was a big deal.
You're asking me if Trump's opinion is a correct statement?
Was it correct? Is he lying about his actual opinion? Does Trump think it was a big deal?
I think Trump thinks it's not a big deal.
Okay, so
like I said, Republicans don't enforce it.
Is Trump wrong about whether it was a big deal or not?
100%.
Okay, so was his life in danger?
Absolutely it was.
Okay.
That's why they brought him into a bunker.
So he's deluded for thinking that it wasn't in danger.
Absolutely. The dude has got an ego problem.
Okay.
He doesn't want to be bunker boy. They brought him into an emergency bunker because 1,000+ far leftists tore the barricades and were throwing firebombs at the White House. And we never got any account
Prove they were throwing firebombs at the White House right now.
Okay, let me pull up the picture. Yep. Do you know about St. John's Church, right?
Oh yeah. This view, while you look it up, this view about rights and that it's all whatever because the gays are doing this, the left is doing this. It's all bullshit. You guys don't believe it. There are some values you guys have. No, you guys actually, I believe that you're supposed to have values, right? You have values. These rights have purchase on you. You're not just going to say that only the people that I like get the rights. Is that the White House?
You're asking me if one photo from an entire article, as I'm seeking to pull up the photos, you've asked me if one image of a Lafayette building being torched by arsonists during the.
But you made a specific claim, didn't you?
Would you like me to pull up the photo of the guard post in the White House grounds being set on fire?
White House
grounds? Those are videos that
grounds?
purport to be a guard station, but you said that they were throwing Molotov cocktails at the White House. You did say that, right?
The White House includes the grounds and the guard post?
Oh, so torching this would include throwing it at the White House, right?
What?
Remember, this is so funny. God, if Pisco brings this up, I'll donate $100 million for stream. So the White House.
Wait, is this the thing? The same thing I'm thinking of?
Oh yes. Okay. Yeah. So he said the White House, and that includes everything in the White House grounds. Okay. So he's going to say that if a building gets torched or whatever, or gets thrown out on the White House grounds, all of that counts as the White House or whatever. Do you think that Tim Pool would make that same concession about being on the Capitol grounds? Because I feel like I've heard, if not Tim Pool, other people argue those people weren't in the Capitol building; they were just on the grounds, right? Notice how, when it comes to a side he doesn't like, even attacking anything on the White House grounds is basically an attack on the White House. But for J6, well, if they didn't go in the actual building, well, what about the Capitol grounds? They were barricaded off. You know that, right? They were barricaded off until the Proud Boys broke through 3 different barricades to get into the restricted area, right?
We're torching this building in Lafayette Square.
The Lafayette Square maintenance building?
Yeah, so we're torching this building.
I'm specifically referring to them throwing a firebomb at the White House grounds. Here you go.
So they weren't throwing at the White House building or fence, fair?
No, what do you...
But you said they were throwing firebombs.
Stop playing semantic games. So let's clarify.
God.
You're representing that they were attacking the White House itself with firebombs, and now you're pointing to a maintenance station. That was
You are pointing to a maintenance station.
Well, where's the evidence of attacking the White House?
Did the guard post get set on fire?
It wasn't a guard post, it was a maintenance station. That's what it says.
Whoa. You're playing games.
So you didn't think I came prepared?
We're not. You did not come prepared.
Yeah, I did.
So you asked me to pull up a photo. As I'm scrolling through an article, you asked me to stop and address an image you decided upon, and then you said, aha, that proves it?
Show the guard post.
I'll pull it up.
Yeah, it's one tweet, one guy that says a guard post is burned down. There's no. So have you read the report?
Have you read the
Parks Department post that says that it was a maintenance?
No.
What's about flailing? Have you read the Parks Department report?
Subject.
No, the report about May 29th and May 30th. Have you read the report about it?
Did you see?
Have you read the report about it? Yes or no?
Flailing.
Have you read the report about the May 29th, May 30th
Tim
protest?
hasn't. Tim hasn't read it, and he won't say that because he's seen articles. Tim won't answer that question. He didn't read the report. He obviously didn't read. Tim doesn't read anything.
Reflecting.
What am I
changing the subject?
What subject am I changing?
Let's go back to, on May 29th, 1,000+ far leftists tore the barricades down, injured over 100 law enforcement officers, set fire to St. John's Church, torched several other buildings, flipped over cars.
Who's changing we were talking about whether they had thrown Molotov cocktails at the White House.
You interrupted me as I was addressing May 29th and asked me to pull up the photo, and I said I would do that.
You made a claim. You said they were attacking the White House with Molotov cocktails. You don't have evidence for that, right?
Is there an image of, you said you saw an image of the guard post on fire?
What one Twitter account said was a guard post.
I will concede that to you.
Okay.
And this is where I'm headed.
Okay.
So let's not get carried away on me. I'll say, you know what, you're right. The fire may or may not have happened, but there is a post online that purports a guard post in the White House grounds was set on fire.
Yes.
So let's just, you know what? Okay. They did not firebomb the White House. They may have, we're not entirely sure. They did tear down the barricades, attack law enforcement, 1,000+, over 100 law enforcement officers were injured, and they set fire to St. John's Church. They set fire to several buildings outside of the White House complex. And we never got a national commission or a committee from Congress. We did not get national raids on the 1,000+. 30+ people died in those riots. We never got law enforcement for 90+ days, over 100 days. Far left extremists were lobbing explosives, mortars at federal buildings. They took over.
I'm sorry, wait. I'm sorry, I missed it. Did we just expand this conversation to the entirety of the BLM riots? Because there were tons of investigations, there were tons of people, I think over 11,000 arrests over all of that. There were convicted, like what, did we just, 30 people died? He's talking about the entirety of all the BLM riots across the entire United States now.
Locations in Seattle, Portland, Minnesota, and Atlanta, in autonomous zones.
You call them insurrections, sir?
Well, May 29th is insurrection.
Wait. You did call the Black Lives Matter situations insurrections, right?
May 29th.
Or did you?
May 29th.
Yeah.
Pisco should just keep repeating it. I know it feels uncomfortable, but I mean, even I feel uncomfortable doing it. But like this, the refusal of any of these guys to answer a question, like just answer it, yes or no. Did they? Yes or no? Hello?
You keep doing that,
yes.
Okay? I refer to...
Yeah, he keeps doing it because he's trying to get you to actually take an actual position, a solid position on literally anything, instead of just like hopping around because you know you've been caught.
Seattle, Portland, Minnesota, and Atlanta, and then asked me if those were all insurrections.
You said I have the videos of them.
The May 29th insurrection was in front of the White House when they ripped the barricades down and forced the president into a bunker.
Okay, whose fault is it that we don't have a report on that and a committee on that?
Republicans.
Okay, is it also Trump's fault?
Yes.
Okay, and also to be clear, since you said this was an insurrection, you agree Jan 6 was an insurrection, fair?
No.
Why not?
Jan 6 is an insurrection insofar as May 29th is yes.
Okay, do you think May 29th was an insurrection?
No.
What's your definition of insurrection?
So the point being made at the time, in the video you're referencing, is that if the Democrats are going to form a committee, accuse the rioters of the Capitol building of being engaged in insurrection, my response is, okay, then May 29th was also an insurrection.
Tim, you and Dan Bongino, other commentators on the right, I have clips of them, all called the George Floyd situations insurrections. You did, before Jan 6. So using your...
No, we didn't.
Yes, I have the clips.
Wrong. Completely wrong.
You're on it saying these are insurrections.
No.
All right, I'll produce that for you, and everyone can follow. My Twitter account is Peace Go Liddy. I'll produce the video of you calling them insurrections. Not only
before January 6th.
Before January 6th. Not only did you do that, you have tweets about it.
You're saying that before January 6th happened, I referred to the George Floyd as an insurrection.
Yes, you did. You said insurrection.
Does anybody have a link to the tweets?
With respect to Washington. If you did do that, Tim, wouldn't you be duty bound to also call January 6th insurrection under your then existing standard?
No.
Why not? If you were willing to call it out before Jan 6, why wouldn't you call Jan 6 an insurrection?
We're talking about two different circumstances.
Oh my God.
We're comparing them in your standard for one, where you were before Jan 6 willing to call them insurrectionists.
You're presupposing that I challenged that.
Sorry, if you did call those things insurrections, were you wrong then?
If before January 6th, I referred to people taking over city blocks as insurrections.
Were you wrong to do so?
In the context of January 6th, no.
No. At the time, were you wrong? And
No.
did you disavow your statements?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay. So, given that you assume you did, wouldn't, under the standard that you applied to these individuals in Seattle, Portland, all that situation, wouldn't Jan 6 also be an insurrection under your standard, your pre-Jan 6 standard?
No.
Why? Well, so what's more insurrection about the Portland situation, or the courthouse in Portland, versus Jan 6?
How long was were the city blocks in various cities occupied?
It depends.
Several weeks to months.
So it's the length of it? That's length?
Several weeks to months. Where did this happen besides Chaz? Did this happen in any place besides Chaz?
Is the difference in insurrection?
Well, first, you're presupposing that I used the word insurrection.
You did, but we're assuming that as a predicate.
Right, and I challenge that. It may have been the case, and I would argue this. The term insurrection as applied from January 6th on was very specific. The intention of individuals to stop an official proceeding to keep a president in power. That was the definition of what insurrection was. My argument after that is, if you were going to argue that January 6th, which included a large group of rioters and a large group of peaceful protesters all wrapped up in the same thing, then I would argue, let's also get a commission on May 29th. And I met Republicans for continually avoiding it and doing nothing about it.
And Trump
that being said, Trump himself, I think Trump's strategy was let the left burn it down so I can win an election. I think he was wrong to do so. I think he should have invoked the Insurrection Act and crushed these motherfuckers and locked them in prison.
Which act?
Insurrection Act.
Yeah, so, but assuming that you did call it an insurrection beforehand.
Perhaps that's what you're confusing.
Yeah. No, I'm not confused about that. So I understand the Insurrection Act could apply to non-insurrections.
I think that's where the confusion
No, it is not, because I understand those nuances, and listen, when I use the term insurrection, I have these, I'm going to say, very in the weeds debates about the term insurrection and what it means, and so I try to look and use an originalist lens on what insurrection means, but I'm using your standards. I'm using your standards. You called certain Black Lives Matter riots and absolutely out of control, and I also would call some.
Let's clarify that. If insurrection is, as defined by the Insurrection Act, as applied to the BLM riots, it is when local law enforcement is not upholding the law. The president.
Hold on, real quick. This is what Peace Code linked before in his Twitter, like half a year ago.
Attacked. They demanded his resignation, and all he did was make it worse, make everything worse. But I truly believe that's his intent. Take a look at this story from Katu 2. Tear gas deployed, Mayor Wheeler in the middle, fire outside federal courthouse. Okay, I want to read this for you. I also have a thread that shows you, a Twitter thread showing you all that happened with Mayor Ted Wheeler. And I got to tell you, man, the government of Portland has now joined insurrection against the federal government. A lot of people, I see a lot of these lefties getting mad because I'm saying insurgent and insurrection and stuff, but it's difficult to figure out how to describe a group of people that keeps going to the federal courthouse and attacking it. I understand it's not like they're showing up with live ammo or anything, but they're showing up with weapons and explosives. Oof. That's just a reality. Mortar shell explosive, commercial grade fireworks are extremely dangerous. They spray fireballs everywhere. So you can start fires with them, especially if you throw it inside. The feds are defending their courthouse. Now, if you follow most progressives and even the mainstream media, they won't tell you this. They won't show you the photo. Look at this photo right here. What we're seeing is an overhead shot. Here's the street. Here are the people. This is a massive fire covering the entire sidewalk. The fires that are being set are huge. And the feds typically come out, in many videos, you'll see them come out with fire extinguishers to put out fires. And then they push back the crowds. The crowds that attack back and claim that they are being repressed. Show for their friends incarcerated inside. Fair point, I think. I don't think these fireworks are actually going to cause significant damage to the outside of the building. But what do? The fireworks will cause damage, and the buildings are barricaded. But what do they do? Sit back? They've breached the courthouse now. So I don't know if he wrote this yesterday, and now they've breached the courthouse. What would you say? Perhaps the reason they started firing at the insurrectionists, we're going to call them fanatics, was because, not necessarily because of the commercial grade fireworks, but because they were trying to breach the courthouse. There's videos posted by Evans himself and by Andy No and many others going back quite a ways where they're trying to break the barricades down. And there's actually a video of them tearing the wood off of the barricades, protecting the glass. There's a video of them with a fire extinguisher trying to bash the glass. And Evans himself notes this right here. You see, this is, as far as I'm concerned, official government joining in, engaging in the insurrection against, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I now remember exactly what the point I was trying to make.
With the diligent valor?
Yeah, the court documents said that the far left breached the courthouse on July 4th.
Okay.
That these people, insurrectionists, entered federal jurisdiction, and that prompted the deployment of these officers, the federal agents, to go out and start clearing things out.
Right, they weren't there until they broke into the federal building. Right,
the 39th day of writing. And so that was the response. If Ted Wheeler stands the police down as police commissioner, which he did. If the AG is suing in defense of the far left, then you have this guy now coming out, the mayor, joining in the riots, lying about it, getting tear gassed, basically assisting.
So Tim definitely was using insurrection, but okay. Maybe he just forgot all that.
The president has the right to bring in the National Guard to enforce local law.
They don't define insurrection in the Insurrection Act, but there are a lot of circumstances, including what you just outlined.
Let's clarify for the purpose of what we're actually trying to discuss.
Yep.
This word can be applied in different contexts. In the context of the BLM riots, were this to be an insurrection, it applies to the Insurrection Act. And the Insurrection Act is when local law enforcement is not enforcing the law, the president has a right to call in the National Guard to enforce local law. I believe that Donald Trump should have invoked the Insurrection Act, and in that context, what they engaged in was insurrection. Local law enforcement was not enforcing the law and was allowing far-left extremists to use violence, firebombs, and physical assault against individuals, government buildings, and otherwise. In the context of January 6th, they said these are people trying to overthrow the government itself, and that's an insurrection. The argument that... Democrats, the J6 committee. If the argument is that if you want to use the insurrection as defined by the Insurrection Act, and that is DC
doesn't define it.
Exactly. So we can only apply the context of the law does. If Donald Trump were to have called the National Guard on January 6th because he deemed an insurrection happening,
call it insurrection?
In that regard, I would say in that context, yes. So understanding what we're talking about is a core element of what these debates always tend to be. So again, in the context of the Insurrection Act, it specifically refers to when local law enforcement doesn't uphold the law. In reference to January 6th, it is a group of people trying to overthrow the government. And that's how it's applied to the 14th Amendment. So I would not say that the individuals in Portland were trying to overthrow the government necessarily. It's a riot, just like J6 was.
I mean, they established an autonomous zone.
Certainly. And they took over police buildings.
In Oregon, they were trying to tear down the
courthouses.
courthouses. And it was in
Certainly.
Wait,
And it
Hassan was at this debate?
took over police buildings.
In Oregon, they were trying to tear down the
Yeah.
courthouses, and it was in Washington that they took over for weeks, and they called it the Chaz, and then the Chop.
But wait a second, folks. I mean,
And to me, that is
how is it not an insurrection?
That's utterly an insurrection.
Okay.
If you take over a police station, that's an insurrection. If you
take over the police station as an insurrection, what about the Capitol?
This guy, dude.
They weren't trying to seize the Capitol.
What were they trying to do? Just murder people inside?
It was like
It has to be a permanent takeover of the police.
what I'm saying is when they come marching in there, the same way people in the 6 previous elections, or at least 3 or 4, going back to Gore v. Bush, there have been people who have been coming in there and screamed that they were unhappy with the way things were happening, and were removed by the Capitol Police.
Yeah, so I have a definition of insurrection that would include some things and exclude other things.
It doesn't become insurrection simply because there's thousands of you who are like that individual there. So no, there was no plan. There was no plan that we're taking over the government. There's no plan that we're gonna.
There was literally a plan. It was literally spelled out in documents. There was literally seditious conspiracy convictions over it. So he's literally lying. But
We're gonna remove Mike Pence. There was no plan like that.
I dispute that. But I think we should step back because I know it's fun to talk about the term insurrection, but really what Tim is getting at is what his perceived inconsistency on the left wing and the right wing with respect to rights. So what we're here about is rights, and I don't think, and I think that you agree that rights mean more to you than just what the majority of the population thinks.
I disagree with his assessment.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think that it's like if I'm sitting here, I'm like, now because I'm in power, I want to have more of this. I do everything I can to remain as consistent as possible. There are times that I've seen Trump do things that I say this is wrong. He did one of this week. This week he endorsed Lindsey Graham as senator. To me, that should have been a violation of his First Amendment rights right there, just uttering that phrase. So yeah,
Lindsey Graham's pretty pro-Israel.
I don't care. See, what are you racist? You assume because I'm
racist.
Jewish.
I know that
because I'm Jewish that I must be pro-Israel.
Now you guys
When have you heard me express that? No. Why would you assume?
You say you're very pro-Israel.
I know. Actually, what I'm saying is you're just coming out there and saying because someone is pro-Israel, that means I
didn't say that because no. That's tongue in cheek. Don't act offended.
No, what I'm saying is you're just drawing these conclusions.
No one's drawing conclusions.
Left in general, I've never been racist enough to be a Democrat.
Let's try this. Let's just try this. How do we reconcile that problem I already mentioned? Yep. The NICS forms requires you to waive your Fifth Amendment rights.
For the military.
No. This is anyone in the United States who wants to buy a gun must waive their Fifth Amendment rights in order to exercise their second.
Yeah, so what the court tells us to look at, because I'm going to take the Supreme Court and their precedent, it says you look at the time of the founding and the enactment of the Second Amendment, what were the kinds of regulations that were in place there that the framers would have considered part of their Second Amendment rights. No one thinks that these rights are absolute in all circumstances. For example, no one thinks that the Second Amendment prevents us from having laws that prevent access to felons or prevent laws that prevent access of guns to the mentally incompetent. These are well-established.
I disagree. I think they protect that.
So you think that felons and mentally
okay,
incompetent people have a right to possess weapons?
Under the Second Amendment, yes. Because it clearly states the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It doesn't say unless we at some point deem them to be. Now, to be fair, there is the argument of due process. The reason why felons can have guns is because the Constitution guarantees due process. All rights can be curtailed following due process.
So you think that felons should have the right to have guns, but that green card holders don't have the right to speak? I mean,
no, I just literally said due process can strip you of your rights. You can have your right to freedom of movement, freedom of speech, everything curtailed if you are in violation of law. In fact, you could be enslaved. The 13th Amendment explicitly allows you to be a slave if you jaywalk. I'm not kidding.
I know. Yeah, pull it up.
The 13th Amendment says any crime. It doesn't specify felonies or misdemeanors, meaning you can commit a petty offense by not returning a library book, and that gives the government the right to enslave you. Granted, those things don't get enforced that way.
Well, would you consider
let me ask you a question. Do you think that someone who gets a green card has more rights, should have more rights than a felon?
depends on.
Because I actually think that's such an immoral position. To me, I look at it as someone coming from the right, and I say to myself, look, the same way I have someone in my house, and if someone's in my house and I invite them into my house, there's an expectation they're going to comport themselves with a certain level of conduct. I came in here before and I said, what is accepted protocol during the show here? Because I'm a visitor here in Tim Pool's studio. If I'm Tim Pool's kid, there's a different standard where even if I violate that, if I violate it here, he's going to throw me out of here. And as you would agree, is his right. If I'm his kid, though, in that case, if his kid is now, he grows up and is 12 years old, 10 years old, and he says, I'm going to no longer support you any longer, we would say that is something that could be criminal.
Let me give you what you want. I do agree. American citizens have more rights than green card.
Well,
I do agree with that.
Well, thank God we got to that.
But not as so far as the
felons,
First
they're
Amendment.
not consented, right? So I think felons have some rights that green card holders don't have, and I think green card holders have some rights that felons don't have. For example, felons don't necessarily have free speech rights to go and protest and stuff, right? So I think they're not overlapping. But these are ways in which, importantly and critically, green card holders and aliens have different rights. For example, you can't exile a U.S. citizen if they commit a crime. You can.
You should be able to.
You think that you should be able to exile American citizens out?
I would prefer it instead of capital punishment. I think capital punishment is worse than exile. I don't trust the state to kill people. The example I like to
I don't know if he's going to the problem is you can't have a country that makes stateless people. It's just a huge cluster for everybody around the world to deal with. It's just nobody wants to deal with stateless people. It's just too much.
give to conservatives who tend to be pro-death penalty is imagine Kamala Harris pointing at someone saying, trust me, that guy should die. They would never believe it. I would prefer it if, when it came to capital offenses, we just said, we're going to put you on a boat and kick you off.
Just be against both. Why can't you can be against both?
What do you do with these people then?
Keep them in prison.
Who's paying for it?
I guess we are.
So you're asking people who want to kill. So here's me looking at a group of people and they say, that person raped and murdered a child, they should die. And I say, no. We don't trust the state.
I'm glad you say that, but
I don't like that person. I think what they did is evil beyond belief. And if we were to
Let's
catch,
unleash them on the world.
let's throw them to other countries.
yeah, well, to other countries. My point is,
wait, do you want to release like child rape into Cuba?
so the argument would be that presupposition is that
Who
you
would
trust the
take
government
these people?
explicitly and implicitly. Do you?
I don't trust the government.
So if Donald Trump came to you and said Mahmoud Khalil is a rapist and a child murderer, would you say, okay, Trump, you're right?
I'd say prove it.
Exactly.
Prove it.
And
Yeah.
now what if he said, we have circumstantial evidence that I believe proves it beyond a reasonable doubt, but nothing definitive, no video, but enough to where a jury of Americans say, we believe it, he should be killed.
Wait, no, proof beyond a reasonable doubt we have?
Yes.
Then put it in front of a jury and it'll be a conviction.
Okay, so my point is, I don't believe the state should be able to murder people.
Okay.
There are, with certain exceptions. That is, a police officer literally watching someone about to rape a murdered child uses
Yeah,
force
but
and stuff.
that's self-defense and that's imminent.
The issue I take largely is, in many circumstances, we see that, I don't want to get into a death penalty debate, but here
But why do you want to send child rape to other countries?
because they're not child rape. The issue
That's
is,
the example you gave.
because I'm trying to choose the most evil thing imaginable, but the what you're putting there is, you trust the government implicitly when they
I
choose
don't,
someone.
but I also don't want
In
to
which
send
case,
child rape to Cuba.
neither do I.